You said something at a speech when we first met that really hit me. And the line was, purpose follows integrity. What does that mean to you, and why was that such a powerful thing to say?
Purpose. There is a desire in the human spirit to understand one's purpose. Man's search for meaning, right? What is my purpose? I think it's impossible for a human being, and I'll just say men in this context, it's impossible for a man to understand his purpose if he's out of integrity.
Welcome, Nick Anderson, to the Present Fathers Podcast. Brother, I am so excited to have you on the podcast. I've been waiting for this, and I think this is going to be a lot of fun. So let's dive right into it. You said something at a speech when we first met that really hit me. And the line was, purpose follows integrity. What does that mean to you, and why was that such a powerful thing to say?
Thanks, by the way. Thanks for having me on. Excited to be in this conversation. And curious to see where it goes. Purpose. There is a desire in the human spirit to understand one's purpose. Man's search for meaning, right? What is my purpose? I think it's impossible for a human being, and I'll just say men in this context, it's impossible for a man to understand his purpose if he's out of integrity. And so I'm just pausing there intentionally, right? Out of integrity with his word, out of integrity with his actions, out of integrity with his choices and his followings. So if a man is out of integrity, he's veering left and veering right and all over the place. If a man is in integrity, even if it's just, I'm going to do this thing tomorrow morning, and then in the morning, I'm going to do this thing in the afternoon, the purpose, I think, begins to be revealed, elucidated. There's light on it. So it's about as short of an answer as I can give you there, but I'm sure we need to unpack that further.
Yeah, I'm a big believer that motivation does not lead to action, but that in fact, action leads to motivation, in kind of the same way, right? I don't want to get up at 5 a.m. and go work out, but once I do and I get started, now I'm motivated. So I think this is kind of the same thing. So many young men and fathers too are lost and feel like we don't have a purpose. We don't know why we're doing the things we're doing. But I wonder if that's because we're not living in integrity. We're not keeping our word to people. And then that purpose isn't there. So I wonder if we're able to live in integrity, that almost becomes a purpose in and of itself.
Yeah, I don't wonder that. I just know it. I just know that that purpose follows into it is that way. If I do something today and I do something entirely different tomorrow, and I do yet a third thing the next day, and each of those are out of integrity with what I know to be right, I have three things to choose from in my identity, in who I am. And so for background, right? I'll take this a little bit wider. There are people who use the words purpose and they'll say my purpose and then calling, like my calling. And the way I make sense of these things is I was created by God for a purpose. I was created by God for a purpose. And I believe, Dustin, you were, and Brandon, you were created by God for a purpose. Maybe many purposes, but a purpose and a season. I don't believe that the calling is mine. So I don't use the language my calling. I think the calling is his. It's his voice that I need to respond to. When I'm clear in my purpose, because I live in integrity in my relationship with God, and I understand my purpose, then when he calls, I can hear, and I know how to show up and respond to his call. So that's like the full unpacking. But we can take the spiritual side out of it and just take it into human existence. If I change my mind every day, if I do something different every day, I'll be without purpose.
That makes a lot of sense. I agree. So where did this grounded purpose come from for you? Was it from your family? Was it from your belief in God? Where did it come from?
It came because I changed my mind every day and I didn't live in Integrity. I mean, I got my diploma from the School of Hard Knocks, let's say. That I think in my own lived experience, just in my life, I've had a certain degree of clarity about what is on the other side of the horizon in my life that might be unique. I can say, actually, I'll use the word integrity maybe a lot in this conversation because we open that way, but I can say with a high degree of integrity, I'm living the life that I hoped I would live. Today, I'm in my mid 40s. I'm living the life that I hoped I would live in my mid 40s when I was 20 something. And because I have that vision a bit over the horizon, I can align my actions, my decisions, my choices towards that, directionally accurate. And it's through a series of experiences where that just proved itself to be true that I can look in the rear view and say, oh, well, that's actually how it works. And when I don't live that way, it doesn't work so well. So it really is through lived experience and then reflecting on that lived experience.
Now, you've had a lot of tougher lived experiences, and I think it would benefit our viewers quite a bit. One being the loss of your wife, and then also the loss of your dad at a very young age, I believe 4. So let's jump into that a little bit. For the guy that has grown up without his dad, you know, I think when I read this, immediately made me think of Charlie Kirk's son.
Mm. Mm.
He's going to grow up without a dad. His daughter's going to grow up without a dad. What would you tell Charlie's son when he's older and he wants to become a man? How do we set somebody like him on the right path when his dad's not here to do it himself, right? Like, how do we help a man that's not had that experience of a dad, right? That doesn't have that blessing. What would be the number one thing that you would start with?
Well, we all have a father, and then we have biological fathers, and we have dads. So the thing that I just didn't want to hear from people when I lost my dad, and I kind of lost him twice. Like you said 4. That's when my mom told him to leave, and my dad was mentally ill and chemically dependent. And so my mom said, you got to go when I was 4. But I didn't understand that. I just knew
Right.
that daddy was leaving, and why didn't he want to stay with me? And then when I was 10, he succumbed to those illnesses and ended his life. If anybody would tell me in those moments that it's okay, Nick, you have a heavenly father, I would have said either words out loud or in my head that I won't repeat right now. Wouldn't help. And yet I know it's true. So there is that. What I did in the wake of my father's death was I looked for dads, multiple. Looked for dads. And one of them was a soccer coach. One of them was my stepfather, who became the man that I call dad. Later in life, one of them was an executive at a bank that I worked for. One of them today is my now business partner, who's 20 years older than me. And I love him like he's a dad. There can be lots of dads to young people in the world. I'm going to jump forward in my life story. We'll go back and forth, but I am the father of 4 children, 2 boys and 2 girls. I became a girl dad just a few years ago. I'm technically a stepdad, but I'm dad. The girls call me dad, and they are my daughters. There are dads out there. And to the little Kirks today, like, man, that just kills my heart. And I know, actually, that there are so many dads that are going to love on those kids, that's true. I just know that that's true. I watched Erica, as I'm sure so many did. Another part of my story is that the mother of my 2 boys was taken from me suddenly in an accident, motor vehicle accident. I was there. And there's no comparison between Erica Kirk and me. I wouldn't even attempt to do that. But to see her addressing an audience took me back to a time when I was addressing friends and family after the loss of Darlene. And my sons were 9 and 5. And I said then that in life there is a before and an after. And we're standing in the in-between. It's very easy to understand this in the context of nature if we think about the caterpillar and the butterfly. We call that period chrysalis. Caterpillar goes in the cocoon and waits to become a beautiful butterfly. But that chrysalis period, it lasts for a period of time. And in that chrysalis period, it's dark. It's dark inside the cocoon, and it's lonely, and it's awkward. I imagine it could be painful to sprout wings. This is one of many chrysalis periods for those children. And for Erica. I think I spoke about this, Dustin, when we met. This may have been a part of my keynote. It's a relevant thought these days. The lesson I would offer to anyone is that if we can identify when we're in that chrysalis period, if we can be aware to say that I'm not after yet, I'm in the in-between. And if we can slow it down and be thoughtful and mindful about how we want to come out of chrysalis, we can actually make some decisions in that place of darkness that can benefit us greatly.
Amen. Any struggle grows us, right? And one of the things I taught my kids with the caterpillar to the butterfly example was, if the butterfly does not struggle coming out of the chrysalis, it can die, and it will not properly spread its wings to be able to fly and to be mobile. And so what the lesson there was is that our struggles, the greater they are, the stronger we become and the better we are built up, just like you were saying, for our great and glorious purpose that God has given for us. And I have no doubts that Erica and her kids have some pretty incredible purposes because of this. Because, God always makes good come from the bad, right? He promises that for those he loves and that love him.
This episode is brought to you by Pre-Sleep. Hey there, my name is George Hayworth. I'm a husband and father and an entrepreneur. I work out a lot. I like to stay physically fit and active. And one of my secrets for how I stay so healthy and get so much done isn't because I'm some awesome guy. It's because I use Pre-Sleep. Now, this product is one of my personal favorites. It's probably the best supplement in my cabinet, and that is because it's 100% pure and natural. All the ingredients are made right here in the US of A, and the product is based around magnesium, L-theanine, and glycine, and these three work together to help you fall asleep faster and stay asleep longer. And then on top of that, it increases the quality of your sleep. So it is a triple threat when it comes to optimizing your sleep. And my favorite thing about it is that there's no melatonin, so it's not habit forming or anything like that. And there's no sugar whatsoever. So it is super simple to use. You just take one scoop, put it in a glass of water, stir it up down the hatch. I do it about an hour before bedtime, and I sleep great. I have no issues getting to sleep, staying asleep, and I track it on my watch. It tells me how good my sleep quality is, and it is exponentially better when I use my Pre-Sleep. So what are you waiting for? Go check it out. Sign up today, get yourself a tub of this, and you will never look back. Your best sleep is waiting in this bottle of magic right here. Get 10% off at checkout by using the code GEORGE10. That's GEORGE10, or tap the link in the description below.
With that said, I'm sure there was quite a bit of growth for you. Can you kind of talk a little bit about maybe some turning points that really sparked some major change for you?
For sure. And if I juxtapose the early childhood experience to the later in life period, as a young boy, I went off to a Bible camp, and I was not a believer. My mother, a 1960s hippie, would still to this day, won't step foot in a church unless it's for a wedding, and even then, she'd rather not. A lot of church hurt in her life. I went to Bible camp because there were motorcycles that we could ride at the Bible camp. They did really well. They had horses and motorcycles, and I'm like, I'm going to motorcycle camp. They said, bring a Bible. I'm like, a what?
That's awesome, man.
So, I'm at camp multiple summers on the motorcycles, and I pray the prayer, and I'm wanting, but I wasn't surrounded. I didn't go home into an environment. I didn't come back into a place where pursuit of Jesus, or even just spiritual pursuit, was nurtured. So here it is, February 2016, and it's the moment after there's this tragedy, and I'm there with Darlene, and I'm praying to a God that I don't have a relationship with, but that is a conversation that started that day and hasn't stopped. So when you talk about growth, the spiritual journey that I've been on since 2016 has been very meaningful, very impactful, has absolutely changed the man that I am. That journey may have started when I was 10, and it just took a long time to figure out as I was veering back and forth and around. I can say too that growth, I had negative growth. I shed about 50 pounds, maybe 60 now, all in from that 2016 time period. There was a moment where I realized that after my wife was gone, I'm the only parent that my children have left, and they're only 9 and 5. I have to stay alive. I have to eat right, exercise, get my head and my heart right. I also thought for the longest time that I was healthier than I really was mentally and emotionally. The truth is, I was a total wreck. Just did pretty good at holding it together most of the time. But I had to break myself down. I had to get really vulnerable. I had to find the safety of men and open myself up. Did some pretty wild stuff, man. I went into the woods in the mountains of Colorado, beat drums, burnt sage, howled at the moon kind of thing. Not even kind of thing, literally. Did those
Nice.
weekend experiences, got vulnerable, got real, put words on my emotions. I can say right now with a high degree of security that there are times when I'm scared. There's times when I feel sad. There's times when I feel loving and tender. I can say all these things and just be really confident that that's just how it is. Those are the fruits of growth.
It sounds, Nick, like your entire experience of life expanded because of that. I think many people, you could almost use the NPC meme, are kind of walking through life and their experience is very narrow, especially if you're on a lot of medications, things like that. Your emotional range has kind of dropped. Talk to me about what your experience is like today versus what it was like prior to 2016. Do you feel like you are experiencing more of life now than you were back then?
The life that I lived in 2016 looked, boy, NPC is an interesting way to put that. It was average. It was typical. I had a great job. I was a senior vice president in a bank. I'd been in executive roles and senior leadership roles in banks for a long time. So I made good money. My wife was not working, so I had the great job. Wife stayed home with the kids, house, 2 cars, vacations. But just, it was the life, right? It's not to say that my life was without meaning, but the depth it just wasn't as deep. It wasn't as real as it is today, because I experienced things that really broke down the barriers or the limits. So let me say this differently. Life today for me is limitless, whereas before 2016 was limited. There were decisions that might have been safe decisions. And this isn't to say that I'm reckless with, physicality or with money or anything like that. It's more about emotion and experience and really being, and I almost despise this word, but I'll say it, authentic. I feel like that word, somehow became an excuse for people to, fly their freak flag and, get weird. But authenticity is being able to lean in and connect with another person on a human level. So I posted something on X recently, and it was like, if I'm not going all the way, if I'm not investing myself fully, if I'm not, it was a a clip from a speech that I gave where I said, I fear insignificance. I fear insignificance. And I think, Dustin, you kind of riffed on that and you said that's a part of the reason why this podcast exists.
That's exactly it. That really resonated. Yeah.
Well, somebody, commented under and said, just so you know, it's possible to do things and they don't have to be significant. And I just responded back like, I'm not built that way. It's not me. Whereas maybe pre-2016, I could do things that were hollow, that were shallow, that didn't have significance because it was just normal. Now, if I know anything for sure, it is that tomorrow is not promised. And time is the great equalizer. We've got as many minutes as does Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos and Bill Gates and Warren Buffett. And those minutes, they have to be significant.
Yeah, Nick, we are all-time billionaires. Hopefully, we have about $1 billion left, all of us,
Yeah.
and hopefully maybe a little bit more if we play our cards right. So, and the reason I wanted to ask you about that was I think that when God came to Abraham, he didn't offer him comfort, he didn't offer him money, he offered him a grand adventure, right? That was one of the most striking things about their covenant was that he offered him adventure. And I think men need some sort of grand adventure, something like what you experienced. And so I really wanted to dive into how, as dads, we can give that to our children. You mentioned a really interesting rite of passage that you did along with your son. Can you dive into that a little bit and explain why it was so meaningful for both of you?
The idea came to me when I was out in the woods in Colorado, beating drums, howling at the moon with a bunch of men. And that was the context there was that this was a rite of passage for grown men. And the leader of the weekend would say to us, there are men sitting around this fire that are 60 years old, that are 50 years old, that are 40, that have not experienced that rite of passage. And so you might be grown children. And that one hit because I hadn't had that necessarily like intentional rite of passage. You were a boy, now you're a man. And so I came down from that mountain convicted that my sons would experience a rite of passage. Now, my daughters grew up in the Jewish tradition and they experienced the bat mitzvah, which is a very clear rite of passage. And for boys, a bar mitzvah, and that's a very clear rite of passage, boy, man. My sons grew up in, Western secular America. So I went to Christian, my oldest boy, around his 15th birthday, or he came to me in the kitchen, I don't know how, and I said, you're going to have a rite of passage for your 16th birthday, and we're going to hike the Enchantments Trail. And he had no idea what I was talking about. He's like, oh, okay, whatever. And I said, it's a 21-mile hike. We go up 5,000 feet in the first 5 miles. And then the walk out is a 6,000 feet descent over the remaining 16 miles. So we're going to have to train for this. You can't just wake up in the morning and do this thing. And he kind of, whatever, Dad, went downstairs. He came back like an hour later. He goes, Dad, that thing, I'm not doing it. And in that moment, there was this bit of like rage. Like, how dare you defy me? Because it was so important to me, right? And I realized that I was afraid. I was afraid that I wouldn't get to do this thing with my son that was so important to me. And that's where anger for me comes from, is fear. And so for whatever reason, I was able to catch that in the moment. And I just looked at him kind of, a little sly, and I was like, yeah, you will. And that was it. So we started by like just taking a walk in the woods. Then we went 2 miles, then we went 4 miles, then we went up some incline, then we did some longer hikes. And on these hikes, man, and there were many, many training hikes, we got into conversations with the boys when you're being physical. I mean, it's just why like throwing a baseball back and forth and having a conversation is the best way to talk to a young man, because they're focused on the physicality and then the words just come out. Whereas if you're sitting down, they're all in their head. So we're on these trails and we're talking everything, like life and future and girls and spirituality and God and gaming and, just everything. One of the hikes, I don't know how it came to me, but I remembered in the act of a rite of passage. In many cultures, there's an adventure, there's a call away, and there's a scarring. There's a physical scarring. And the story that was told to me when I was in the mountains burning the sage, howling at the moon, was of I'm going to get this wrong, but an African tribe that in the rite of passage, the boys, there's a scar across their forehead. So you can see visibly if there's a scar, it's because they're men, right? So we're hiking, and I say to Christian, I said, "Would you ever get a tattoo?" He said, "Yeah, I don't know, maybe." I said, "Well, after we do that hike, you want to get matching tattoos?" He goes, "Yeah, I do that." And so we did this hike. We trained for it. We went up. We hung out way too long in the upper enchantments. So our hike out was in the dark. It was brutal. There was like 2 miles to go. We could barely shuffle our feet. Christian's like, I can't do it. I can't. I just need to lay down. We're going to sleep here. And I was prepared to do that, right? Like I said, no. Here's what you're going to do. I said, you're going to just focus on your breath. All you're going to do is focus on your breath. You're going to breathe in. You're going to breathe out. Your body is a machine. It's going to just keep moving. You just focus on your breath. Now, I might have been talking to myself as much as I was talking to him, but that was the coaching through. So we spent, it was like 2 hours of just breathe in, breathe out, breathe in, breathe out. We got to the end of the trail. I had an RV parked at the end of the trail. We cracked open some ice cold like LaCroix, guzzled them down, took a shower, washed all of the stuff off, and we just crashed out. We drove home right to the tattoo parlor and we got matching tattoos. And so there's like, that's the whole story in a nutshell. And then I told his younger brother, I said, "You know how I did that thing with Christian and it was 21 miles? Yours is going to be 75 miles. So a different experience for him it's really kind of architected around, each boy's kind of unique interests or needs. And I'll give you just a little kind of TLDRs. With Finn, we're going to do an overnight backpacking rather than just a straight through. And he bought for me a book, and it says, I've got it on my bookshelf. It's so tell me about your life, Dad. And it's like 120 pages with all these questions. You fill in the answers. So we're going to take that book on this hike, and he's going to interview me, and he's going to fill out this book.
Oh, that's such a good idea.
At the end of it, right, he's got the memento that, maybe he'll keep forever. But he'll basically, interview me about my life.
Yeah, I had that. I got that from my parents and my grandparents. And then I actually got to have my grandfather on this podcast and my dad.
Wow.
So having that video legacy for me is like, it's just such a comforting thing just to even think about, I had the gift and the opportunity and the blessing to have them at a time where I could actually really dive deep into their knowledge and the legacy they want to leave and what they think about us. And yeah. But I think Dustin had a question regarding some of your adventures that are more business oriented. So I'll kick it over there to him.
Well, okay. So first of all, what was the tattoo? What'd you guys decide on?
So if I can get it in I can't really get it in there. So it's on my forearm, right? Kind of there. And Christian's is too. And it's an image of what's known as Asgard Pass. To those who have done it, it's the Soul Crusher. It's like 1,700 feet of elevation in like a half mile. So think like bouldering, nearly rock climbing, but you're, and so it's a picture of that we have here. And the reason it's on the forearm is here again, totally, trying to achieve something here is when he's like 30 and he reaches his hand out to shake somebody's hand. Somebody's like, "Oh, what's that?" He gets to, remember that story over and over again. So do I, but he'll remember it long after I'm gone.
And it's an instant conversation starter and icebreaker. So absolutely fantastic. So your businesses are a big part of your legacy, a part of who you are. Can you talk to me a little bit about what they mean to you and why how you became an entrepreneur initially? Why'd you choose that over kind of the 9 to 5 situation you had going on before?
Yeah, it chose me on some level. I was a banker for a long time. I said that. Uh, I retired from the industry and believed it was just going to be the boys and me. So it was just the three of us. And I thought my vocation. Here's the story. When I turned 18 years old, I started working in a bank when I was 17. When I turned 18, one of my colleagues sat me down and she said, "Here's a pen, sign this." And I said, "What is that?" She said, "It's your IRA." And I was like, "I'm 18. What are you talking about?" She goes, "Shut up, kid, sign it." Right? I said, "I can't even afford, I don't make any money." She goes, "You're going to put $25 every 2 weeks in your IRA." Well, that was
Yes.
enough. That was enough to get started. So by the time I was 40, I'd played enough cards right that I didn't need to work. I do a little bit of consulting, but it was going to be the boys, me. I changed my LinkedIn title to Ski Bum, and that was going to be life. It was legit. And then I met the woman in the red dress. Now, Alex Hormozy talks about the woman in the red dress. So that's actually a photograph of Ariana on our honeymoon in Girona, Spain. It's a wonderful story. Some of the Game of Thrones was filmed there, so you can imagine kind of the aesthetic. We're walking around in our street clothes, and I said, it would be just amazing if you had a red dress, because I would take 1,000 pictures of you with all of these backdrops. So about an hour later, we were walking by a little boutique, and there's this red dress in the window, and it fit her perfectly. So I bought it for her, and we went back, and I took 1,000 photos, that being one of them. The story of Ariana and I coming together really was one of divine timing. We met when I was in the Valley, and she's beautiful and lovely and all of the things that I ever, would imagine in a wife. And I was in the Valley. So I said, "It's been really lovely to talk to you. Have a nice day." And then a year and a half later, we met again. After I had gone into the mountains and howled at the moon, I'm going to say this over and over again, I had found myself. I had learned integrity. I had learned integrity. I'd learned how to live in integrity with myself. I was a man of my word. The 4 agreements were agreements that I could keep with myself. And I was really clear on my purpose. I knew what I was, and I'll tell you, she was attracted to that a lot. There is nothing more dangerous, attractive, or sexy than a man with purpose, a man on a
Amen.
mission. So long as it's good, it can be ambitious, right? But really clear on purpose. The man who's lost or wayward or, apathetic, talk about a turnoff to a good woman, right? So we met again, and we were just courting in the most beautiful way, just talking. We weren't ever even dating, and I had kind of said, I don't have space I have a purpose. My purpose is to raise my boys. This is what I'm about. And I'll have fun, I'll play and socialize. I don't mean fun and the Playboy fun, but I'll have fun. And, so we played pickleball, and we went to some concerts, and we did things, and we didn't even kiss. We just hung out. Clearly there was some interest. It wasn't like we were platonic, just friends, but anyhow, your question is about vocation. It's about why work matters. So I'm single, I'm quasi-retired, and here is this beautiful woman that is the answer to prayer, the woman of my dreams with 2 beautiful daughters. I can't be a retired guy. I can't be a ski bum and be this woman's husband and these girls' father. So I kick it up a notch with the consulting work that I'm doing. And here again, find clarity of purpose and go forward with that. The short story is that my now business partner, Jeff, at first was my mentor, and then one day I responded to what I thought was God's calling. It was the most random, obscure thing. I'm driving down the road. I get this urge to send Jeff a 2-word text message. And I'm like, that's crazy. So I keep driving, trying to forget this urge, and it doesn't go away. Some people would refer to this as the nudge of the Holy Spirit. So I like look up through the sky, sunroof or moonroof of the car, and I'm like, okay, God, if I do this, it's not going to hurt anybody. It might make me look foolish, but if I'm acting obediently in faith, then you'll catch me if I fall down. So I text Jeff these 2 words, and he responds immediately. Says, like, you have no idea the timing of your message. Let's talk. And within weeks, shook hands on me coming into the firm where I am now, CEO and partner, co-owner with Jeff. It's a 25-year-old firm, and I have been blessed with the honor of stewarding it for the next 25 years. So that all of those roads lead back to purpose. That road leads back to integrity, and really just being able to look at myself in the mirror and say that, like, I do what I say I'm going to do.
Amen. It's such an important distinction too when you're talking about your wife, that you can find, and I tell people this all the time, but you can find the woman who's worthy of a lifetime, but you yourself have to be ready, because if you're not both aligned, you could miss out on that chance. And so I always encourage young men, be ready, have that growth mindset, have that ambition like you're speaking of, try to make businesses and fail forward, right? So one of the things that I noticed on your social media is that you say that there's about a 10% chance of family businesses making it onward to the 3rd generation.
Mm-hmm.
So one of the questions that I was thinking was, how are you preparing your children for these situations and for that woman? Like, how are you preparing them to carry on the business or to choose their own path if they want?
It's so good. So good. In fact, this was a post that I put on LinkedIn just today. It was a picture of Finn, our youngest son. He and I played golf yesterday. And today I watched him play the first 3 holes in a match. He's playing competitively for school this year, and really cool. So we got out to the course that he was playing on yesterday, got a little pre-round in there. Anyhow, I said in this post that he is most likely the 1 out of 4 of our children that's most likely to work full-time in our family business.
That's awesome.
Yep. The other 3 are fully capable, but they want to go their own way. They want to do their own things. Our oldest, Abigail, earned her realtor's license, or passed her realtor's exam and got a license, was a licensed broker before she turned 19. So while she was 18. And yeah, she's very ambitious. So she's launching a real estate career. We have a bit of a real estate investment portfolio. And so she represents us in all of our transactions. That's
amazing.
Part of the family business. Now, someday, God willing, we might buy a real estate brokerage and she could be the managing broker. And so that could be, kind of an extension of what we're doing. Our oldest son, Christian, he's tech support for, most all of our tech stack between the companies, but he doesn't want to work in the family business. He's just doing it while he goes to college, or at least that's what he says. Right. So I think the theme here is they are connected into the business, but they watch us every day, and we live a very integrated life. So I don't use the word work-life balance. I use, really, it's a frame that Dr. Taylor Burroughs, who's a friend of mine, and I think very highly of her, she uses this integration, this notion of integration. We live a fully vertically integrated life. Our youngest daughter was with Ariana hanging wallpaper in a commercial building that we just bought, bringing it up. And Ellie wants to be an architect, and Ariana's, her core vocation is interior design and architecture. So, she's close to it. And then I think Finn, he might just take over from me. That's kind of what I'm thinking.
Nice.
Yeah.
Well, I can tell you, as an IT guy, I feel Christian's pain.
Yeah.
You wear so many hats, but it's so cool that they all get to scale off of their experiences off of the family business, because they see firsthand not only the leadership being modeled, but they're actually seeing what real world business looks like and how it thrives. And sometimes it can be boring, and sometimes it can be a mundane thing, but it's such an incredible thing, because it takes that ambition and that discipline to wake up and to grind, especially when you're founding something and starting something up. So it's pretty cool to see that.
They see that Ariana travels with me when I travel for work, for conferences. She comes, and she can work remotely, and so that works really well. She'll be joining me in Nashville here this week, and Orange County next week, and these are fun experiences. We had a family vacation this summer, and I chartered a really big boat and took all our kids and took my mom, and the kids would see mom and me on the email early in the morning. But I mean, listen, we're drinking coffee in the San Juan Islands as the sun is coming up and sending some emails. Like, life doesn't suck. And then I bring all the kids to the upper deck, and I play that Moby song, Bring Sally Up, Bring Sally.
Yeah, got it in 60 seconds, man.
So we did push-ups to it, and we did squats to it, and then we were doing crunches to it, and that was like our family thing, So they see this integration of not just the grind, but also the commitment to mental health. We have a family dinner every Friday where my in-laws, Lana and Pavel, come, and my mother comes, and my father came when he was still with us, and my brother-in-law and sister-in-law. We have a dining room table with 12 chairs, and it's every Friday. And the conversations that occur at that dinner table with 4 teenagers and multiple generations, and I was so just moved. And this is months ago, when my kids were referencing Charlie Kirk, at the dinner table. And I'm like, wow, right? We're having these conversations, and we are in the Jewish faith, rabbis are known to engage in what they would refer to as an argument for the sake of heaven, where rabbis are arguing over the meaning of Scripture, but they're doing it for the sake of heaven. And we do this at the dinner table Friday nights for Shabbat. We argue for the sake of heaven, so that our children, we don't just say to them, because when they were younger, and I would say this to my boys, until you're 8 years old, I tell you how to think. I'm really clear. The child psychologists should agree that around the age of 8 is the age of reason in the development of the young mind. And so I just said, until you're 8, I tell you what to think. But now they're not 8 anymore. So I ask them, what do you think? And then Christian in particular, his way of understanding, his way of making sense is to argue. He wants to check me. If I can defend my thesis, then then he can trust it. So we get into some really, really fun conversations at the dinner table, and I love it, man.
Yeah, critical thinking is one of my favorite things ever. It's so great that you teach that at the dinner table. I think that's such an opportunistic time to do it. So,
yeah, totally agree.
The dinner table wouldn't happen without Ariana. She really embodies this notion that a mother is the heart of a home. And if you think about the bringing together of our two families, we're the Brady bunch. I brought the boys, she brought the girls. I joke all the time, we're still looking for Alice. We could really use an extra hand every now and again. But to bring these children together, and Dustin, I mean, you saw us, you met Ariana, that's us, right? For our kids to recognize mom and dad, brother, sister, and to be a family as deeply rooted as we are in such a short time is entirely a testament to Ariana's character and who she is as a woman and as a mom. So I definitely married up.
Nicely done. Yeah, that's awesome. So you are really doing a lot of things right. You've been very intentional put on your dad consultant hat for a moment. What are you seeing from friends, from other people, things that dads are doing wrong that if you were a paid consultant, you had 10 grand to fix some things in their life for the day, what are a couple key things that you're seeing a lot of dads making as mistakes that you think you could fix?
Well, just to make it real, I'll say the mistakes I made. So when we lost the boy's mom, one of the first things I did is I gave him cell phones. And the way I justified that to myself is so that I could stay in communication with them, so that, they were only a phone call away from me. Well, come on. When I was 9 years old, it was like you come home when the streetlights come on, right? Like, so I shouldn't have done that, because they learned way too young escapism into the screen, right? So I admire parents who don't allow their children to have access to screens. When I go to a restaurant and I see a 4-year-old with an iPad at a dinner table, I'm sad. I feel sad. And I feel sad because I did that. So that's a thing. I've said that this age of 8, the age of reason, it's just the case that Scripture tells. I mean, listen, all the answers are in the book. All the answers are in the book. And the book doesn't say, tell your children what to do and they will do it. The book says, you raise a child up in the way, and when they are older, right? And I don't quote Scripture very well, but I get the point there. I can case in point for that one. Christian at 19, he was house sitting for my mother. She's traveling. She's a widower now, and I love the fact that she's getting out. So he was living in her house for a month, and this is his first kind of extended period of being a bachelor. He came home for the Friday dinner. His hair was combed. His shirt wasn't all wrinkled. He was bright-eyed and awake, which is different than when we, get him to come upstairs at home. And he was living into himself as a young man with some responsibility to show up for dinner. And I said to him, I really like this version of you. When are you moving out? I really don't want him to move out. I want him to stay here. But he was telling us over dinner that night about the experience of taking he and his sister and his brother to Swaziland in South Africa. And we went with Ty and Annie and the group, right? When I took them there, Christian would have said, well, I don't need to go there. I can just watch it on YouTube. A couple of weeks ago, when he's at the dinner table, he's like, yeah, you can see things on YouTube, but it's not the same as being there. I so desperately wanted him to get that 2 years ago, but he wouldn't. He didn't. He couldn't. It's only now that he's had, his own lived experience that he can see into that. So the advice that I would give is listen to the old guys, right? Listen to the old guys, because the old guys would tell me, just be patient, Nick. It'll come. It'll happen. And I'm starting to see it now with the kids where I lost patience. I'd say if there is a chief regret, top of the list regret, it is when I didn't control my anger, particularly with my boys. I have a short fuse, and I don't like it. I don't like that about myself. It's a place of great shame for me in my life. And when I lose my temper with my children, it hurts them way more than it hurts me. My mom used to spank me, and she would tell me, this hurts me more than it hurts you. And I'm like, no, it doesn't. This is corporal punishment. But it does hurt me to think about those things. So, dads that get angry at their kids, makes me sad, because I did that, and it makes me sad. Last one, this one, I was listening to someone recently talk about, my dad made me do this thing, and I'm so thankful for it. And I think it was, I wanted to get a liberal arts degree, and he made me get a business degree or something, just not super critical, but something like that. And in that moment, I had this like flashback of reflections of how many missed opportunities have I had to tell my children just the hard truth, just the real truth. But instead, I wanted to let them, I don't know, I didn't want to lean in and say, and there's even some stuff right now with my kids that I need to tell them. I need to say, like, you should be doing X, but you're doing Y, and you're going to regret this later. So I'm just going to tell you, do X. That's real love.
Truth and love. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah.
It sounds like you need a couple more mountain hikes and some special trips for each of these kiddos.
A lifetime of them, man. I want so many more. I really do.
Well, Epictetus said that wealth consists not in having great possessions, but in having few wants. So what is true wealth and success to you, and how are you going to envision your legacy that you'll leave?
If I have 4 kids who want to come home every Friday for dinner, that's success, and that's wealth. And then if they make little grandbabies for me, then I'm rich beyond, my imagination. That's real truth. That's like truth. That's sincere. There are few things that I feel better doing than sitting on a couch and having 2 kids in each arm and just pulling them in. Like, even now, and they're grown, that feeling that I have, I don't feel that way if I get a, $1 million deposit in my bank account. I don't feel that. Like, I feel a different kind of joy when I see big numbers. When I'm skiing with my daughters, when we take our skis off and we hike up and we go backcountry skiing and I'm with them, that degree of excitement, because they're with me, that, I can do things alone. I can drive a fast car. But to do it with my kids, to play golf with my 15-year-old son yesterday and to watch him like not be a total like jerk on the golf course when he duffs a shot and be proud of him and think like, I could actually spend 4.5 hours on a golf course with you and enjoy myself, right? Like those are the things. Very real. And I want to make a lot of money. And I want to have I want to give my wife a vintage Porsche because she really loves a vintage Porsche. So that's very real. And I will. And she'll have the thing, she'll have the pretty things that she wants. We created a family business. The name of our company is NACHEF. And that means absolutely nothing to anybody in the world but us. Because it's Nick, Ariana, Abigail, Christian, Eliana, and Finn. Just the letters into, some word that is like gibberish. But that's the holding company for our family office. And we are going to build a portfolio of operating companies and real estate assets that our kids will steward into the next generations. And we will teach them how. And we will teach them how to be careful stewards. And that, I think, is, legacy wealth. That's what we want to build.
As Sahil would say, that's your enough. And those are noble goals. I love it. That's great. Yeah. Nick, I wanted to double click a little bit because it's such a key issue for me because I struggle with anger as well. I think as many of us do. I learned a lot from Mr. Rogers. What do you do with the mad you feel when you're so angry you could bite? How have you overcome your anger? What were your tools to get there? And have you been able to teach that to your children? Do you feel like you've passed on some of that legacy of how to handle probably the most problematic emotion for most men, anger?
First of all, I'm not perfect at this. So full disclosure, anger is an emotion and emotions are real, and I don't control my emotions. I don't believe that any human being controls their emotions. I believe that human beings control their behavior, but not the emotion. It's a feeling, and that's just my view of the world. So acknowledging it and to say out loud, name it to tame it, right? I am angry. Okay, so that's one step. The fact that I'm angry, though, is not your problem, Dustin, right? And a lot of times it's like, you're making me angry. Well, no. I
You're a pretty
feel
strong dude, Nick. It might be a problem for me.
sure. Fair statement. Fair statement. But the problem is not yours to solve. Let's say it's my responsibility to solve. So there is that name it to tame it. So I'm gonna use anger. I'm gonna give you another perspective on anger. And this came to me here again in the woods, howling at the moon. And the man who shared this, I don't remember his name, but he was a legitimate UFC guy, like was on the pay-per-view. And I don't follow UFC enough to know, like, I feel bad that I don't remember this guy's name, but I know the guy that owned the gym that trained him. And anyhow, Vinny's gym in just outside of Denver. I went there and I worked out and kind of forgot that I was a mile high and did some high intensity stuff. And whoo, baby, that's a whole other level. Okay, so this guy, he's saying, when I'm angry, I want my family to feel safe. I want my family to respond to them seeing me angry with a feeling of safety. And it's, this is a moment of like trying to wrap my head around. He said, because when I'm angry, it is to defend them, to protect them. So I don't want my anger to point at my family, but I'm acknowledging that anger is good. Anger is fuel. So if we think of anger as like gasoline, fuel. Well, gasoline, if you put it into a gas tank that fuels an internal combustion engine, that's forward progress. But if you dump gasoline all over a building and light it on fire, that's a problem. Anger is fuel. Sometimes I have to get angry to work out in the gym. Sometimes I have to, feel a sense of anger to get like all the accounting work done that I just makes me angry, right? So that's not bad. But if my child does something that scares me, the emotion that I experience is fear and then anger. That's just how it is. Anger is always a secondary emotion in my experience to fear. So how do I model that for my children? For my boys in particular. My girls hardly ever see me angry. I raise my boys and girls very differently. Funny story. Christian says, "Dad, I'll have a check to you for car insurance, in a week." And my daughter Ellie says, "I can't believe how much you guys pay for my gas." It's just a difference in how I raise the boys and the girls. So when I experience that feeling of anger, I will communicate it, and then I will actually just verbalize my process. Listen, right now I'm pissed off. This thing that you're doing, it's got me just really fuming. So I'm going to walk away right now and I'm just going to go breathe this out because I want to come back to you and I want to talk to you on another level. And I just want to address the thing that you're doing. But if I don't walk away right now, I'm not going to be a nice man. And then I walk away. I just talk them through it. Some of that probably isn't ideal because there's still this air of a threat, got to be afraid of dad. It's the best I can do right now. And it's a whole lot better than what I did do.
Yeah, we all handle emotions differently, and as long as you're doing it in a way that's healthy, that's all you can do, or at least the healthiest you can at the moment. Until you have a certain lotus of control and peace, it's difficult, especially if there's any past wounds that, like a good example of that is some people, they don't get sad, they go straight to anger because the anger is the self-defense mechanism. And so there's a lot of psychology that shows that if you can heal a lot of wounds, it can help. But even then, until you do, you have to have coping mechanisms. So I think it's beautiful that you do that, especially with your children. But it also allows them to learn to verbalize and put words to their emotions too. You're modeling it, right? So it's important. But speaking of modeling, imagine a brand new dad, kind of over his head, doesn't know what to do, kind of looks like the deer in the headlights coming home from the hospital. what's just the best advice you could give a dad like that if you were sitting down with him and he said, "Help me, I'm drowning."
When I have a friend or even an acquaintance that is about to be a dad, I like to give them the book Mindset by Carol Dweck. And it is said that there is no owner's manual on raising a kid. Mindset is the closest thing to that there might be. So the thing that I wish I could do over again with my kids was, and I think this is, it's almost common knowledge now since the book came out, and it's been a long time since the book came out, but it's a growth mindset versus a fixed mindset, and it came from the book Mindset by Dweck. It's teaching the kids to experiment and try to fail forward, as you said, Brandon, that we can always grow and to have that growth mindset. So what I would tell my son Christian when he was 6 years old, before I read the book, is you are really good at math. You have a good math brain. Well, as soon as he reached a point of competence, right, when he couldn't just do it naturally, then he felt like a failure because dad always told him that he had a really good math brain and now he can't do it. Instead, I should have rewarded him for, you do a really good job practicing math. You do a really good job learning math. So
yeah, that's that praising the effort. Yeah, that's there's a lot of studies that go into saying that you should always praise the effort and not the end result, because then you have feeble-minded kids that feel like failures if they're not meeting a certain goal.
Makes them fragile. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
All of everything that you're saying came from Dweck's book Mindset. The follow-on to that is not Dweck's book, but it's Angela Duckworth, and she wrote the book Grit. And Grit will tell you that it's okay to go through some stuff because that's where resilience is born, right? So I'd offer these books, to the soon-to-be father. That the deer in headlights thing, my comment is, your first one's made of glass and all the rest of them are made of rubber. And that's just how it's going to go. There's no way that you can convince the father of a newborn that their baby's going to be okay, because father has one job, and that is to protect this baby with everything that there is. And so, you're driving home from the hospital 15 miles an hour, you're looking everywhere, you're slowing down 100 feet before the stop sign, and you've never in your life driven this way, checking to see that the car seat's there, has it moved, is everything safe, are my brakes right, I better check the oil. This is good. This is good. I don't want to tell that guy, calm down. I want to tell that guy, good job. Good job. Because that's what we're supposed to do. And then you go through it, and then baby number 2 comes along, and you're like, car seat, whatever. They didn't have those in the 60s, right? So we can, but you learn through it, and that's I'll tell you, we're a few thousand years into this experiment. Right? God's experiment with planet Earth. We're a few thousand years into it. You'd think that the guys before us, they wrote everything down. All we got to do is read the book and we know how to do it. But there's just a part of the lived experience that is the human experience, right? And I wouldn't want to take that away from any new father. I want to just say, good job. Good job.
Yeah, and that's why when I see a leader, if he's not a father, I don't think he's equipped near as much as somebody who's a leader who is a father, because there's so many more lived experiences and different nuances that are so subtle that you learn from your children and from your own self-control in the journey of fatherhood that just equip you as such a better, more empathetic, more in-tune leader. And of course, that's my opinion. It's not a fact, but it's something that is definitely relevant. So
one of those dads that I had, that I told you about, was a man named Chris Delegans. And he made a huge impact on my life. And I haven't talked to him in 25 years. But I still remember him saying, my son is the greatest teacher I've ever had. And that's true. Our kids, my kids, all of them, teach me things every day about myself and about the world because I love them differently, because I care about them, because I listen to them, because the things that they say mean a whole lot more to me than the things that anybody else says. So I understand, like I just lean into that more and the lessons that are there. But uh, kids, especially the boys, because they were little and I was around, they're like little mirrors. They walk around and they just reflect back to me mostly the stuff I don't like about myself when they're little kids, right? It's the kids, they don't do what you do, or they don't do what you say, they do what you do, right? And so when they reflect back to me the behaviors that I don't like, and I'm like, where did you learn that? And the only way they could learn it is from me. Oh man. So then I'm learning a lot about myself as these little mirrors walk around and show me all my blind spots.
Yeah,
And
I feel like business is like the basic training, and your kids are like ranger school. Like there's such a echelon difference between the two. Sorry, Dustin, didn't mean to interrupt you, brother.
no, and it's those difficult moments with your kids where you really learn the most, right? It seems like it's going to be just an annoying situation, and this problem that has to be overcome, and then you realize later that both of you go through that difficult moment together, and that's where the growth happens, and it's just beautiful. So I love those moments.
I've been in leadership. It's interesting, Brandon. You talk about leaders. My very first vocational leadership assignment, I was 19 years old and promoted to be the assistant manager of a bank. So I had literally employees that were 3 times my age. There were women working in the bank that were 60 years old, and I was 19, and I was their boss. I didn't know anything, right, compared to these guys. And yet there is a certain hierarchy, and particularly this was in the late 90s and early 2000s when there was still a bit of decorum in the world. These days, it's a little different. But there was, respect for seniority and that, like I say, that hierarchy. So in other words, when I'm at work, if I say, this is what we're doing, most of the people do it. And, sometimes I'm wrong, or they do it begrudgingly or whatever, but there's just that respect that is paid. With a 4-year-old, when I say do it, and they say, no, daddy, I'm like, I don't know how to handle this. This doesn't compute. I'm going to put you on a PIP, son. We're going to have a performance appraisal right now. I'm talking to HR, and if you don't shape up, you're out of here, right? Like that doesn't work. So the lessons that I learned in the office are not necessarily transferable, and yet the opposite is not true. The lessons I learn at home, I can bring into the office, and it is that deeper level of understanding and that empathy and that seeing the other human and having a greater perspective. So that's
never negotiate with terrorists, especially if all they want is a juice box. So
I love it.
Yeah, so
Awesome.
good.
Well, Nick, this has been an absolute pleasure. Do you have any final thoughts that you want to share with the audience before we ask the best place to find you and all that good stuff?
Final thoughts. You know what I'd like to do is I really would just like to honor Charlie Kirk and think about Erica in this moment and connect it back to something that was an early part of our conversation, and that's purpose and integrity. There might be a single guy, and not in a relationship single guy out there that's listening to this, and I want him to hear the part of this conversation that was, that high value woman is going to be attracted to a man with purpose, right? There might be a married guy out there that's struggling in his marriage, and maybe he needs to start with integrity and find his purpose, and show the woman that he fell in love with will come back to him. And I look at the life that Charlie lived so publicly and with integrity, solid integrity and clear purpose, and a wife and children that smiled in every single picture and every single movie and every single clip. There's an example there that we can all be proud to follow. So I'll say it this way. In my life, I've developed what I think is the definition of leadership, and it's my working definition. It's what I walk around with. That leadership is a verb. So leadership is an action. And a verb is two things. It's an action and it's an occurrence. So leading is an action. But the occurrence of leadership, when leadership occurs, is after a choice. And I used to think that it was the choice of the leader to lead. I'm going to lead. I'm going to make that choice. And by doing the actions of leadership, then I'm a leader. But that isn't the case. Leadership is a choice. The occurrence of leadership is a choice. And it's a choice that is only made by a person of free will who chooses to follow another. Leadership is the choice of the follower, not the leader. And this is true in marriage. If a man wants to lead his wife, he must understand that leadership is her choice to follow his lead, not his choice to lead her. The choice that he makes is to live with integrity and purpose so that she will follow him. So the choice of the leader comes down to this. If someone chooses to follow me, can I look at their actions and their behaviors as they follow me, and will I be proud? So, leadership is a choice, and that choice must be made by a person of free will. Those are my closing.
I'm going to have to listen to that a couple more times. That's beautiful. That is a lot to unpack there. I really like it. Nick, thank you so much. I can't wait to watch this again and absorb some more of your wisdom. Very enjoyable.
Fun conversation, guys.
They're really great. Where can people find you? Where's the best place to learn about your company and all of your writing?
If someone goes to oneaccord, oneaccord.co, oneaccord.co, they'll find me and my company, and there'll be links to all the socials. I'm pretty findable on the LinkedIns and the Twitters and the Facebooks and all that stuff. Nick Anderson, CEO, One Accord. That'll get you there.
All right. Very good. Well, everyone go give Nick a follow and go check out the website. And dads, let's get climbing that mountain of fatherhood.
Thanks for watching this episode of the podcast. If you're on YouTube, drop a subscription to us. And if you are listening on Apple or Spotify, please leave us a review. It helps greatly. If you are also ready to level up as a man, check out Elite Sentinel Coaching, our program designed specifically for men, where we forge men into leaders. We turn cowards into kings, weaklings into warriors. Become the hero in your story. Join us today.